It happened in a crowded cafe on an ordinary afternoon, the kind of day that should have been forgettable. She had gone there to read, to enjoy the hum of quiet conversation and the comfort of a warm drink, but her attention was drawn, almost violently, to the moment a man walked in. There was nothing remarkable about him to the untrained eye, average build, ordinary clothes, yet the instant their eyes met, the world seemed to fall silent. It wasn't attraction in the conventional sense. It was recognition. It was as if some buried part of her surged awake, whispering in an urgent, breathless tone, "You know him." And she did, though she also knew she had never seen his face before in this lifetime. Her heart began to race without reason, and a wave of emotions crashed over her: relief, longing, a strange ache in the chest that felt older than she could name. He looked at her the same way, pausing mid-step as though the air had thickened between them. For a moment, the cafe, the chatter, the clinking of cups, all dissolved. It was just two souls standing in the middle of time, staring at each other across a chasm of lifetimes. Neither spoke, neither needed to. There was an understanding there, a silent acknowledgement that defied logic. She felt, with complete certainty, that this was not the first time they had met. It was simply the first time here. Later, when she tried to explain the encounter to a friend, she found herself stumbling over her words. How do you tell someone you feel as though you've shared centuries with a person you've never met? That you can see fragments of a life together in flashes, not in detail, but in essence. She remembered hands clasped under a different sky, the echo of laughter in a language she did not speak, the sting of loss that seemed to reach from the marrow of her bones. None of it made sense to the mind, but the body knew, the heart knew, the soul knew. These are the moments that tear a hole in the fabric of what you think is real. Science might call it coincidence. Psychology might label it projection. But deep down, in that quiet space where no labels can intrude, you understand that something far greater is at work. You understand that what you experienced was not an accident of circumstance, but the sudden lifting of a veil. That person was not a stranger. They were a returning character in the long, complex story of your soul's journey. Encounters like this can shake you, because they collapse the boundaries you've been taught to believe in. We grow up thinking life is a straight line, birth, a single span of years, then death. But when you stand face to face with someone who feels like home in an instant, you realize life is not a line at all. It is a circle, an intricate weaving of threads that cross and tangle over centuries. You meet the same souls again and again, sometimes as family, sometimes as friends, sometimes as lovers, and sometimes as enemies. The roles change, the scenery changes, but the bond remains. This is why, in that cafe, she didn't just see a man ordering coffee. She saw a warrior standing beside her on a battlefield long before this age was born. She saw the glint of recognition in his eyes, and knew he saw her too, not as she was now, but as she had been then. In that split second, lifetimes condensed into a single glance. Such moments can be both exhilarating and disorienting. Exhilarating because they confirm what your soul has always suspected, ingrained, that you are far older than your body, and your relationships stretch far beyond this one chapter. Disorienting because they make you question everything you thought you knew about love, loyalty, and destiny. You may find yourself asking why you met this person now, in this lifetime. Is there something unfinished between you, a debt to be repaid, a lesson to be learned? Or are they simply here to remind you of the vastness of who you are, to awaken something dormant within you? People who have experienced these encounters often speak of a magnetic pull, an unexplainable comfort, and at times, an equally strong discomfort. Not all soul recognitions are warm. Sometimes they carry the sting of betrayal from a past life, a tension that you cannot place in the present but feel in your core. Either way, the sensation is undeniable. You have known them before. The human mind might grasp for logic, but the soul doesn't need it. The soul operates in knowing, not reasoning. In the days after the cafe encounter, she found herself thinking about him constantly, as though his presence had reactivated a part of her memory. She dreamed of places she'd never been, conversations in strange tongues, moments that carried a depth and reality unlike ordinary dreams. There was a familiarity that seemed to stretch beyond imagination, a sense that she was tapping into a shared history that existed just beyond the reach of her conscious mind. When you meet a soul from another lifetime, it is not just about the face you see in front of you. It's about the invisible tapestry of connections, choices, and energies that tie you together across time. Some of these connections bring healing, the resolution of old wounds, the renewal of love that once was lost. Others bring challenge, pushing you to grow in ways you would resist otherwise. But all of them carry meaning. The very fact that your souls have found each other again suggests that there is something significant still at play. The truth is, you will meet many people in your lifetime, but only a handful will trigger this deep recognition. These are the souls who walk into your life and make you feel as though the ground beneath you has shifted. The encounter may be fleeting, or it may last a lifetime, but either way, it will leave an imprint on you. You will remember it not for what was said, but for what was felt. That unshakable certainty that the story between you began long before you were born into this world. Perhaps that is why these encounters feel like a gift and a challenge, all at once. A gift because they awaken you to the reality of your eternal nature. A challenge because they force you to reckon with the truth that life is far more mysterious than you may be ready to admit. You may never know the full story of who that person was to you before, but you will carry the essence of the meeting with you. It will live in your memory like a spark, a reminder that in the great dance of the soul, there are no strangers, only reunions waiting to happen. There is something unsettling about meeting someone whose eyes feel older than time itself. You've likely experienced it at least once, that moment when your gaze meets another's, and for a heartbeat you are no longer two strangers, exchanging polite acknowledgement, but two souls staring through lifetimes of history. It is not simply about beauty or intensity. These eyes don't sparkle with the brightness of youth alone, nor do they dim with the weight of years. They hold something else entirely, a layered depth, like oceans with no visible bottom, or the glint of starlight from a night sky older than any memory you can place. In those moments, you feel an undeniable pull, as though a hidden part of you recognizes them before your mind can catch up. Many traditions speak of the eyes as the window to the soul, but for reincarnated souls, the metaphor feels literal. It is as if every incarnation leaves behind a subtle watermark on the gaze, a record of triumphs, losses, loves, betrayals, and awakenings. You might notice how these eyes can shift in their expression in ways that seem impossible to match with the owner's age. A child might look at you with an ancient weariness that no playground mishap could ever cause. A young adult might meet your stare with a kind of knowing, as though they've seen this exact exchange before, perhaps many times over, and are quietly measuring the meaning behind it. This gaze carries both a blessing and a burden. On one hand, it radiates a sense of trustworthiness, a silent communication that says, "I have been through storms and survived. I know things you haven't yet put into words." On the other hand, it can make others uneasy, as though they are being seen in a way they didn't agree to. That's because the depth in these eyes is not just about perception in the present, it's about memory without context, a kind of soul-level recognition that transcends this life's timeline. When you look into such eyes, you are not only seeing the person before you, you are brushing against the shadow of every person they have ever been. For those who carry this gaze, it can feel isolating. Imagine walking through life with the weight of centuries pressing behind your glance, knowing that most people cannot meet your eyes for long without feeling exposed. This is not arrogance, it's simply the natural magnetism of accumulated soul experience. When your spirit has walked through countless lifetimes, that accumulation shows itself in subtle but unmistakable ways, and the eyes are the most direct outlet. You may even notice that certain photographs of these individuals carry an unusual quality, as though the eyes seem to follow you no matter where you stand. Artists, photographers, and poets have tried to describe this for centuries, often without fully understanding they were capturing the signature of reincarnation itself. There is also a kind of frequency embedded in such eyes, not one that can be measured in any laboratory, but one you feel in your chest and in the pit of your stomach. It's the same sensation you get when you stand in a place that is both strange and yet somehow familiar. Something inside you whispers that you have been here before, even when every fact insists otherwise. When you meet someone with the ancient gaze, that same whisper emerges. You don't just see them, you feel them, and you know in some inexplicable way that your paths have crossed before, in a time and place your conscious mind cannot name. The ancient gaze can be warm and inviting, or sharp and piercing, depending on the soul's nature and the echoes of their past experiences. Some carry eyes that soothe and comfort, the gaze of a healer who has spent lifetimes tending to the wounds of others. Others possess a stare so intense it feels like they are peeling away your layers, the mark of someone who has walked as a judge, a warrior, or a keeper of sacred knowledge. But regardless of the quality, the effect is the same. You are altered by the contact, even if just for a moment. You might find yourself thinking about that encounter days later, replaying the connection without knowing why it lingers. It is also said that those with the ancient gaze tend to notice each other, like a secret network of travelers recognizing a fellow voyager at a crowded station. Their eyes meet and something clicks. They may not speak, but an unspoken acknowledgement passes between them. You've been here before, too. This recognition can lead to friendships, partnerships, and even rivalries that defy explanation, because the bond is not formed in this life alone. It is drawn from a tapestry of shared moments across time, each one leaving its imprint in the depth of the gaze. Children who carry this sign often bewilder their parents. From their earliest days, they may meet your eyes with a steadiness unusual for their age, holding your gaze without the self-consciousness most children display. They may even appear to be looking through you rather than at you, as though sizing you up against some unspoken measure. For parents who are sensitive to energy, these moments can be both awe-inspiring and unsettling, for they suggest that this is not the child's first experience navigating human life. It's as though the soul inside that small body is far older than the physical shell it now inhabits. There is also a curious duality in living with the ancient gaze. On one side, it can attract others who are drawn to the depth and sincerity it conveys. People might tell you they feel seen by you in ways they have never experienced before, even if you've barely spoken. On the other side, it can also repel those who aren't ready to be seen so clearly. Some will avoid eye contact altogether, sensing, often unconsciously, that your gaze will uncover truths they would rather keep hidden. Over lifetimes, the soul learns how to balance this, softening its gaze when needed, and focusing it when the moment is right to awaken recognition in another. For those who suspect they carry this mark themselves, it can be helpful to observe the reactions of others. Do people seem unsettled when you hold eye contact for more than a few seconds? Do strangers confide in you almost immediately, as if something in your presence gives them permission to share their secrets? Do you feel an uncanny familiarity when locking eyes with certain people, even when you've just met? These are subtle indicators that the eyes you see in the mirror are more than just the product of genetics. They are the current vessel for a light that has burned through many bodies before. Ultimately, the ancient gaze is not about beauty, color, or shape. It is about the transmission of essence, the way the soul communicates its history without a single word. You cannot fake it, and you cannot erase it. It is the signature of a spirit that has traveled far, learned much, and carries those lessons quietly in the depths of its eyes. When you meet such a gaze, whether in yourself or another, know that you are looking into a story that stretches beyond the borders of this life, and in that recognition, a piece of your own story may stir awake. Some people seem to arrive in this world already carrying a secret map of skills and knowledge they never had to earn in the way the rest of us do. You watch them pick up a musical instrument for the first time and, instead of stumbling through awkward notes, their fingers flow across it with the grace of years of practice. You see a child sketching a scene with precision far beyond their age, capturing perspective and shading without ever having been taught. Or someone hears a foreign language and not only understands pieces of it, but pronounces the words with perfect accent, as though their tongue remembers the shapes it once made centuries ago. These are the moments that make you pause, because they hint at something deeper than raw talent. They hint at memory, not memory from this life, but memory carried over from another. It's easy to dismiss such moments as mere genetics or coincidence, yet there is a quality to them that feels different. It's not the same as a quick learner picking up something new. It's a resonance, an instant familiarity, as though the skill is not being learned, but remembered. Imagine if your soul were a library, and each lifetime a book. Some of those books have chapters so deeply etched into your essence that they bleed through into the present. That's what it's like for these souls. They open their eyes in this world already carrying echoes of the past, and those echoes emerge in their art, their movements, their problem-solving, or their way of speaking. There's the story of a little boy in a rural town who had never seen a piano in his life. His family could barely afford electricity, let alone music lessons. But one afternoon, while visiting a relative, he wandered into a dusty corner of their home and found an old upright piano. He sat down and began to play, not random banging like most children, but flowing, complex melodies. His relatives stared in disbelief. Where had he learned this? The boy just shrugged, as though the question itself made no sense. He didn't feel like he was learning, he felt like he was remembering. The same pattern appears in those who have an unexplainable pull toward a craft or discipline they've never been exposed to in this lifetime. A woman might find herself drawn to weaving intricate patterns on a loom she's never touched before, yet her hands instinctively know what to do. Another person might feel compelled to work with herbs and plants, recognizing their properties without reading a single book on botany. These instincts are like breadcrumbs scattered through the soul's journey, pointing back to lifetimes where such skills were honed, mastered, and cherished. It isn't always a skill in the traditional sense. Sometimes it's an immediate understanding of certain systems or philosophies, as though the person has walked through their principles countless times before. Someone might read a spiritual text for the first time and grasp its deeper meaning without explanation, as though the words are just reminding them of something they've always known. Another might step into a city they've never visited and navigate it with ease, intuitively knowing which streets lead where. These are not accidents, they are traces of the many lives that have come before, whispering into the present. When you encounter such a person, you can feel it in the way they speak about their craft or knowledge. There's a quiet confidence, not the kind born from arrogance, but from familiarity. They don't talk about learning it, they talk about loving it, like an old friend they've been reunited with. And often, these people can't explain why they are so drawn to it, only that not doing it would feel like a part of themselves was being ignored. Children tend to display this most vividly because their connection to past life memory has not yet been dulled by years of conditioning. They might sing in melodies from ancient folk traditions they've never heard, or construct elaborate structures from blocks that mimic architectural styles from centuries past. One child might display an understanding of mathematics far beyond their schooling, while another may instinctively choreograph dances reminiscent of cultural rituals from places they've never seen. In these moments, it's as though the soul has left a bookmark in its previous story and simply picked up where it left off. Sometimes, these abilities show up in more subtle ways. A person may have a knack for diplomacy in tense situations, reading people's emotions with uncanny precision, and knowing exactly what to say to bring harmony. Such a gift might have been cultivated in lifetimes as a leader, a healer, or a negotiator. Another might have an instinct for survival in nature, recognizing edible plants, reading weather patterns, or navigating without a map, skills possibly honed in lives where such abilities meant the difference between life and death. Of course, not every unlearned talent is purely positive. Just as the soul carries forward its wisdom, it can also carry forward patterns that are less harmonious. A person might have an instinct for manipulation, the ability to subtly influence others without being detected, because they once used such skills for power in a previous life. Someone might show an instinctive fear or mistrust of certain tools, animals, or environments not because of trauma in this life, but because of experiences in another. These, too, are forms of memory, and they can be as revealing as the more celebrated gifts. What's fascinating is that these carryover abilities often emerge at key moments in life, as though the soul is unlocking them when they are needed. You might go decades without realizing you have a gift for painting, only to pick up a brush one day and watch landscapes flow from your hand as if they'd been waiting all along. Or, you may find yourself in a crisis that demands a skill you didn't know you had, and suddenly you act with the calm expertise of someone who's done it countless times before. The question then becomes, why do some abilities cross the bridge between lives while others fade away? Some believe it has to do with the depth of emotional and energetic investment in the skill. If something was deeply tied to your identity in a past life, if it was born from passion, necessity, or love, it may imprint itself so strongly on your essence that it survives the transition into a new incarnation. Other times, it may be a karmic gift, a tool you've carried forward because it will help you fulfill your purpose in this lifetime. When you witness these unlearned talents in yourself or others, they are more than curiosities, they are signposts. They are reminders that your soul's story is far older and more complex than your current biography suggests. They urge you to look deeper, to consider what these skills are here to accomplish now. Are they a continuation of work left unfinished? A gift meant to serve others? Or a hint about who you were before you stepped into this body? The truth is, the soul is a collector. Every lifetime adds to its library, and while much of that knowledge rests in the quiet stacks of memory, sometimes it spills over into the present. When it does, it's easy to think you're starting something new, when in reality, you're simply resuming a chapter you've been writing for centuries. And perhaps that's the most beautiful part of it, the realization that your life is not a blank slate, but a tapestry woven from threads of many colors, some so old, they glow with the light of ages past. There is a peculiar kind of longing that cannot be explained by photographs, documentaries, or travel brochures. It's the ache you feel for a place you have never been, a pull that tugs at you in quiet moments, as if somewhere across oceans and mountains there is a home that your body has never touched, but your soul remembers in exquisite detail. You might see a picture of a cobblestone street, a windswept coastline, or an ancient ruin, and something inside you stirs so strongly, it is almost physical. It's not simple curiosity or appreciation for beauty. It's recognition, pure and undeniable, as though you are looking at the face of someone you loved long before you knew their name in this life. This sensation doesn't wait for logic to catch up. You may have no ancestral ties to the region, no cultural connection, and no rational reason why a certain mountain range in another hemisphere makes your heart swell as though it's calling you home. Yet the pull is there, steady and insistent, whispering in moments when you least expect it. Sometimes it comes in dreams, visions of walking narrow alleyways you've never consciously seen, the smell of a market heavy with spices you couldn't name, the sound of a language your tongue has never spoken yet, your heart somehow understands. When you wake, the details blur, but the longing remains. This is not a fantasy your mind constructs for amusement. It is often the echo of a life once lived in that very place, where your soul carved memories deep enough to survive the veil between incarnations. You might have loved there, suffered there, or completed some chapter of your growth that left its mark on your being. And now, in this life, the thread has been tugged again, reminding you of where a piece of your spirit still lingers. Some people feel it as a restless yearning to travel without knowing exactly where they want to go, while others have a laser focus, a single location that lives in their mind as vividly as their own hometown. When you finally arrive at one of these places, something extraordinary happens. The air feels different. Every corner looks familiar, as though you've walked these streets countless times before. You may find yourself instinctively knowing where a road will lead without checking a map, or recognizing the layout of a building before stepping inside. The most uncanny part is the sense of emotional alignment, an ease, a comfort, a quiet hum in your chest, as if the land itself exhales in recognition of your return. Locals may even remark that you seem to belong there, though they cannot explain why. This is not coincidence. It is the magnetic pull of soul memory at work. Certain landscapes seem to carry these soul imprints more strongly. Rolling hills, jagged cliffs, dense forests, or wide deserts, each have their own kind of voice. You might be drawn to the sound of waves hitting a rocky shore, not simply because you enjoy the ocean, but because you once stood there lifetimes ago, watching the same tide. You might feel at peace among towering mountains, because you once sought spiritual solitude in their heights. You might be drawn to the quiet echo of old temples or sacred sites, because your hands once helped to build them. These impressions are stored not in the conscious mind but in the deeper layers of your being, where time does not erase them. For some, The pull is so strong it becomes a compass for their entire life path. They will save for years just to step foot on that one piece of earth. And when they do, it is often not the tourist attractions that move them most, but the small, ordinary details, the smell of the rain on old stone, the way the light falls at a certain hour, the rhythm of life in the streets. These are the things the soul remembers, far beyond what any guidebook could describe. Others may never physically reach the place they long for, yet still feel an invisible tether to it, carrying its presence like a hidden talisman through their days. Interestingly, the pull to a place never seen is not always tied to beauty or joy. Sometimes it is linked to unresolved energy from a life where things ended abruptly or painfully. A person might be inexplicably drawn to a battlefield, a desolate ruin, or a place marked by tragedy, feeling a strange mixture of attraction and heaviness. This can be the soul's way of seeking closure, offering a chance to stand once more in that space and release what was left undone. The moment of returning, whether physically or through deep meditation, can carry a powerful sense of peace, as though a circle has finally closed. This phenomenon is not limited to adults. Many children speak of wanting to go to specific countries or cities they have never learned about in school. Some will describe architectural details or natural landmarks with surprising accuracy, even correcting their parents when they get something wrong. In these cases, the pull can be even more striking, for the child has not yet absorbed enough worldly knowledge to fabricate the connection. Instead, it flows freely from the soul's memory, unfiltered by the skepticism that adulthood so often brings. If you have felt this pull yourself, you may notice it intensifies during times of personal change. When you stand at a crossroads in your life, the soul often seeks strength and clarity from places it has known before. You may feel an overwhelming urge to see that mountain again, to walk through that ancient city, or to sit quietly beside that river. These are not random urges, they are invitations to reconnect with an aspect of yourself you may have forgotten. Sometimes just looking at a photograph of the place can shift your energy, like a tuning fork ringing in harmony with your soul's vibration. The most important thing to remember about the pull to places never seen is that it is not always meant to be solved like a mystery. Yes, travel can be a profound way to answer the call, but sometimes the purpose is more subtle. The place may represent a certain frequency or lesson that your soul is calling you to embody here and now, even if you never set foot on its soil. It might be the sense of belonging, the courage you once had there, the joy you once felt, or even the discipline you cultivated in that environment. The memory of the place becomes a bridge between your past and your present, offering you exactly what you need to take your next step forward. When you listen to this pull, you begin to see life in a deeper way. The world is no longer just a collection of locations to be visited, it is a living map of your soul's own history. And whether you choose to follow that thread across the globe or simply honor it in your heart, you are acknowledging that your journey is bigger than this single lifetime. That acknowledgement alone can awaken something profound, a sense that you are not wandering aimlessly through the world, but returning again and again to the places where pieces of you still live. And perhaps, in doing so, you'll find those pieces waiting patiently to be reclaimed. There are moments when you meet someone, and, without exchanging more than a glance, you know that this connection runs deeper than the surface. It's not the polite warmth of meeting a stranger or the gradual comfort that comes with time. It's immediate, undeniable, and sometimes overwhelming. You may feel an inexplicable joy in their presence, as though you've just found a long-lost friend, or an equally inexplicable tension, like you've stumbled upon an adversary from an ancient battlefield. These reactions defy logic, but they have a logic of their own, one that comes from the quiet, unbroken thread of shared lifetimes. Your soul travels through existence not in isolation but in a cluster, a group of souls you meet and re-meet across the ages. These are your soul group, your cosmic companions. Together, you play out an endless exchange of roles, weaving a complex story where you are lovers in one life, siblings in another, teacher and student in the next. With every meeting, there is purpose. Sometimes the purpose is to heal what was wounded before. Sometimes it's to continue work you began long ago. And sometimes, it's to finally learn a lesson that has been circling for centuries, waiting for both of you to be ready. When you encounter a member of your soul group, there's a resonance that moves beneath words. Your energy systems recognize each other before your minds do. It's why you might feel deeply comfortable with someone you've just met, trusting them instinctively as though they've already proven themselves to you in another time. It's also why you might bristle in the presence of someone without knowing why, sensing a history of betrayal or unresolved conflict that your conscious mind has no record of. These reactions are the soul's way of saying, "We've been here before." In some cases, the connection is so positive and magnetic that it feels like coming home. Conversations flow effortlessly, and there's a mutual understanding that transcends explanation. You may finish each other's sentences or intuitively know what the other is feeling without being told. These are often signs that you've shared lifetimes of harmony, perhaps working toward the same goals, supporting each other through challenges, or simply loving one another across many forms and identities. The bond has been built over countless experiences, and its foundation is unshakable. But not every reunion is easy. Some soul group connections arrive in your life carrying the weight of unresolved karma. This might appear as immediate conflict, misunderstandings, or power struggles. These dynamics often trace back to previous lives where harm was caused or promises were broken. The soul recognizes the opportunity for resolution, but the human self often resists, preferring to protect the ego rather than face the discomfort of healing. It's in these moments that you are presented with a choice: to repeat the cycle or to break it through forgiveness, compassion, and conscious action. There are also connections that feel intense and compelling but carry a bittersweet undercurrent. You might meet someone who instantly feels like they belong in your life, yet circumstances make it impossible to be together in the way you desire. These situations often echo past life scenarios where timing, social structures, or choices kept you apart. The familiarity stirs the same longing, but the soul understands that not all reunions are meant to be lived out as they once were. Sometimes the purpose is not to rekindle, but to recognize, honor, and release. Children often display this recognition most clearly because they have not yet built the walls of skepticism that adulthood brings. A toddler may show immediate affection to a stranger, holding their gaze with a knowing smile, or avoid certain people with uncharacteristic wariness. They may say things like, "I know you," or "I remember you," without being able to explain what they mean. While adults might dismiss these as childish fantasies, they can be glimpses of an unbroken soul memory surfacing in the present. Even in the modern world, these encounters still hold the same ancient patterns. You might meet a coworker and, within minutes, feel as though you've been working together for decades. You might sit next to someone on a plane and feel compelled to share things you've never told another soul, as though you instinctively trust them. Or you may lock eyes with someone across a room and feel an electric jolt of recognition that makes the rest of the space fade away. These are not accidents, they are threads of the soul group pulling taut, reminding you that time and space are only temporary barriers. The more aware you become of these connections, the more you start to notice the patterns they bring into your life. Certain lessons repeat with different people, hinting that the lesson is tied not to the individual, but to the shared karmic thread between you. You may also find that certain relationships feel disproportionately significant, as though they are weighted with meaning you can't fully name. This is often because they carry a ripple effect. The healing or harm that occurs in these bonds has the power to change the trajectory of multiple lifetimes, not just the current one. Recognizing your soul group is not about labeling every person you meet. It's about paying attention to the resonance you feel, the pull or push that happens before you've had time to form a rational opinion. It's about honoring the possibility that the people in your life may be playing roles in a much larger, longer story than you can see. And it's about approaching each connection with curiosity rather than assumption, knowing that the soul's reasons are often far more layered than the human mind can grasp. These reunions, whether harmonious or challenging, are sacred opportunities. They are the moments where you can choose to deepen love, repair trust, or simply bear witness to the fact that some bonds cannot be severed by death or distance. When you meet someone and feel that instant connection or conflict, it's not a random spark, it's the echo of your shared history calling you to remember. And in that remembrance lies the chance to step more fully into who you are, and into the web of souls who have walked beside you since the beginning. There are moments when you look into the face of a child and realize you are not simply staring at innocence wrapped in newness. You are meeting a soul that has walked through centuries. These are the children who speak with an authority that catches you off guard, their words carrying a weight no book or teacher could have given them in the few short years they've been alive. They are not precocious in the ordinary sense. There is no performance in their tone, no mimicry of adults for the sake of attention. Instead, there is a quiet certainty, as though they are recalling truths that have been stored inside them for ages, waiting for the right moment to surface. Sometimes, you hear it in the way they answer a question. A parent might ask something simple, expecting a short, childlike reply, but instead receives an answer so profound, it stops the conversation. It might be a statement about the nature of love, a reflection on death, or an observation about the world's sorrows and joys that feels as if it belongs to a poet or philosopher. These words often come without hesitation, as if the child isn't inventing them but retrieving them from a place beyond the reach of most minds. And when they speak, they often leave adults blinking in silence, unsure whether to feel amazed or unsettled. The old child is not always easy to spot at first. On the outside, they may laugh and play like others their age, but there is a certain stillness in them, a pause between their actions that hints at a deeper layer beneath. They often notice things that others overlook: the slight change in someone's expression, the tension in a room, the sadness in someone's voice even when their words are cheerful. It's as if their senses are tuned to a finer frequency, one that allows them to pick up on emotional undercurrents and hidden truths. When they ask questions, they tend to be piercing ones, not about surface-level facts, but about the meaning behind those facts. There are also old children who carry a certain sorrow that cannot be explained by their short time on earth. You see it in their eyes, a heaviness, as though they remember losses that haven't occurred in this life but weigh on them all the same. They may cry for reasons they can't articulate, or feel compassion for people and animals they've never met. Some will speak of places they miss, friends they knew, or events they describe with vivid detail that does not match anything in their current experience. In rare cases, they even recall scenes from other eras, their descriptions aligning with historical details they could not possibly know. For parents and teachers, being around such a child can be both humbling and challenging. On one hand, their wisdom can be a source of guidance, even for adults. They seem to cut through confusion with clarity that feels like it comes from another realm. On the other hand, their depth can be isolating, especially when surrounded by peers who are absorbed in the simpler concerns of childhood. The old child often struggles to relate to others their age, finding their conversations shallow or uninteresting. This can lead to feelings of loneliness, as though they are waiting for someone who speaks their language, a language built on lifetimes of experience. The old child's wisdom is not always expressed in words. Sometimes it's in the way they comfort someone without needing to be told that comfort is needed, or in the way they choose patience when anger would be easier. They may have an instinctive respect for life, showing kindness to plants, animals, and even inanimate objects, as if they understand that everything holds energy. Their sense of justice often appears early, and they may become deeply upset at unfairness, cruelty, or dishonesty. It is not that they are simply well-behaved, it's that they seem to remember, at some deep level, the cost of violating certain truths. Many cultures have recognized the phenomenon of the old child. Some believe these are souls who have returned intentionally to guide, teach, or balance karmic debts from previous lives. Others see them as messengers, bridging the gap between spiritual realms and human life. Regardless of the interpretation, the pattern is clear. These children bring with them a depth of character and perception that feels like it was earned over many turns of the wheel of life. They often arrive in families or communities where their presence catalyzes growth, challenging those around them to think more deeply, act more kindly, or see the bigger picture. The old child's presence can also awaken dormant parts of the adults they encounter. A conversation with them might stir memories or insights long forgotten. Their questions might inspire a shift in perspective or lead to a moment of self-reflection that lingers for days. It is not unusual for people to feel as though these children are teaching them, even though the roles of teacher and student are supposed to be reversed. And sometimes, in the stillness of their gaze, or the simplicity of their answers, they deliver truths that could take a lifetime to fully understand. However, the old child's journey is not without its challenges. Carrying the weight of many lifetimes in a small body can be exhausting. They may feel out of place, misunderstood, or burdened by an inner knowing they cannot share freely. Sensitive to the energy around them, they can become overwhelmed in chaotic or emotionally charged environments. Their deep empathy, while a gift, can also lead to emotional burnout if they are not taught how to care for themselves. This is why it's important for the adults in their lives to provide space for solitude, creative expression, and connection with nature, all of which can help them feel grounded and restored. When nurtured, the old child can thrive, offering their gifts without being consumed by the heaviness they carry. They often gravitate toward creative outlets like art, music, or writing, which allow them to express their inner world in ways that transcend language. Some find their place in spiritual or humanitarian work later in life, their early wisdom shaping the path they choose. And though they may never lose the sense of being different, they often come to see it as the very thing that gives their life purpose. If you recognize the traits of an old child in someone you know, or perhaps even in yourself when you think back on your own childhood, it is worth remembering that this is not a coincidence. These souls arrive in each life with a reason, carrying seeds of lessons and abilities that the world needs at that particular moment. They are not ahead of others because they are better, but because they have been here before, walking through enough trials and triumphs to see beyond the illusion of the present moment. Their wisdom is not borrowed, it is earned, carried forward across time, and offered freely to those willing to listen. In the end, the old child reminds us that age is not measured in years, but in the depth of the soul's journey. They are living proof that memory can stretch beyond the limits of one lifetime, and that wisdom is something we carry with us, gathering it like stones along a path that loops endlessly through history. When you meet such a child, you are not just meeting who they are now, you are meeting the echoes of who they have been, and the promise of who they will become. And perhaps, in their presence, you might remember that you, too, are far older than you seem. There are moments when memory slips through the cracks of time, arriving uninvited and without context, yet carrying the weight and texture of something real. You might be sitting quietly, lost in thought, when suddenly you're not in your living room anymore. You're standing on a cobblestone street, the air heavy with the scent of burning oil lamps, your feet bare and cold against the stone. You can feel the rough fabric of a garment you've never worn, hear the chatter of voices speaking in a language you don't know but somehow understand. And then, as abruptly as it came, the vision dissolves, leaving you breathless and wondering where, and when, you just were. These moments often come in dreams, but not the hazy, symbolic kind that fade with the morning light. These dreams are crisp and vivid, so real that waking feels like a disruption rather than a return. You might dream of walking through a city that no longer exists, touching the walls of buildings you know have been gone for centuries. You might see yourself in a mirror, only to find that the face staring back at you is not your own. The air, the sounds, the weight of the moment, it all feels like memory, not imagination. And when you wake, the emotions from that dream cling to you as stubbornly as if they had happened only hours before. Sometimes these recollections don't even wait for sleep. They arrive in the middle of ordinary moments, triggered by something as simple as the scent of a spice, the sound of a certain instrument, or the sight of a landscape. You might walk into a building for the first time and feel an inexplicable wave of familiarity, knowing exactly where each hallway will lead. You might meet a stranger whose voice sends a ripple through you, as though you've heard it whispered to you in another lifetime. These flashes can be brief, no more than a second, yet they carry a depth that ordinary memory rarely holds. For some, the recollections are not fleeting but recurring, playing out the same scene over and over as though the soul is trying to remind them of something they cannot afford to forget. A woman might find herself dreaming repeatedly of tending a small garden behind a stone house, each time feeling the same warmth in her heart as she prunes the flowers. A man might have visions of sailing across a turbulent sea, the same worn wooden deck beneath his feet, the same salt spray stinging his eyes. These aren't random, they are fragments of another existence that has imprinted itself so deeply into the soul that it insists on surfacing again and again. There is often an emotional signature attached to these memories that gives them away. Ordinary daydreams don't leave you weeping for reasons you can't name, or with a sudden ache in your chest for a place you've never been. These memories out of place do. They carry with them the emotional residue of whatever moment you are remembering, the joy, the grief, the fear, the love, and those feelings hit you with a force that bypasses logic. You don't think, "I must have loved that person." You feel it in your bones, as if that love is still alive in you now. Children are particularly open to these recollections because their link to past life memory is still fresh. A young child might matter-of-factly tell their parents about a place they lived before, describing in detail the streets, the buildings, and the people, only to have those descriptions match actual locations they have never visited. They might recall the names of relatives no one in the family has ever heard of, or recount events from decades, or centuries, past as though they were telling a story from last week. Many parents dismiss these as imagination, but in truth, they may be fragments of a soul story that has not yet fully faded. What makes these memories so unsettling for adults is that they don't fit neatly into the narrative of the current life. You know the places you've traveled, the people you've met, the skills you've learned, and these recollections don't belong to any of them. They appear to have no origin in your present, and yet they feel more substantial than things you actually remember doing. It can leave you questioning your sanity or wondering whether your mind is simply creating elaborate fictions. But the soul doesn't work like the mind. The soul keeps records that transcend the linear timeline we are used to living in. Some of these memories appear during times of heightened emotional or spiritual change, as though the shifting of your inner world stirs the deeper layers of your being. Meditation, illness, grief, or moments of profound joy can sometimes act as keys, unlocking doorways to these hidden chambers of memory. Once opened, the images and sensations can pour through with startling clarity. They can also be brought forward by visiting places that your soul remembers, even if your body has never been there. Standing on the cliffs of a coastline you've never seen might bring tears to your eyes, because some part of you is recognizing it as home. Not all memories out of place are gentle or comforting. Some are heavy, even haunting. They may come as flashes of traumatic events, moments of loss, danger, or death, that leave you shaken and unsettled. These, too, are part of the soul's archive, and while they can be harder to face, they often surface for a reason. Sometimes they rise because a part of your soul is ready to heal what it could not resolve before. Sometimes they are warnings, urging you to avoid repeating choices that led to harm in the past. And sometimes they are simply reminders that you have walked through darkness before and survived. The challenge with these memories is learning how to hold them, to honor their presence without letting them overwhelm you, and to listen for the message they carry. They might be pointing you toward a passion or calling that you've forgotten. They might be revealing the root of a fear you've never understood. They might be helping you recognize someone in your life now who was once central to your story. Each fragment is a clue, and together, they can form a map of the soul's journey through time. These moments of recognition, these glimpses into other lives, are not there to confuse you. They are there to remind you that you are far more than the sum of your current experiences. They are whispers from the deeper self, inviting you to remember the truth that your story did not begin at birth and will not end at death. Every memory out of place is a thread, and if you are willing to follow it, it may lead you back to the greater tapestry of who you truly are, a soul whose history spans centuries, whose path has crossed with countless others, and whose present life is just one chapter in a book that is still being written. There are certain pains, fears, and markings that defy the explanations of modern medicine or psychology. You may carry them without question, assuming they are simply part of who you are, yet beneath the surface they hum with a strange familiarity, as if they are not entirely born of this life at all. Persistent phobias that have no root in your current experience, aches that resist treatment, birthmarks shaped in uncanny ways. or injuries that recur without logical cause, can sometimes be the footprints of wounds carried over from lives you no longer consciously remember. These are not random quirks of the body or mind. They are echoes, reminders of unfinished stories that have followed you here, waiting for resolution. Consider the child who has an unexplainable terror of drowning despite never having a near-death experience in water. The fear rises instantly at the sight of a deep pool, the sensation overwhelming their ability to think clearly. Doctors may label it an irrational phobia, yet to the soul it is a perfectly rational reaction, a survival memory from another time, when water marked the end of a life. Or the person who has always avoided open flames without knowing why, feeling their heart race uncontrollably near a fire, even a small candle. In another chapter of their soul's journey, perhaps flames were not a source of warmth, but of finality. The body they wear now may be new, but the memory embedded in their deeper layers of consciousness is not. The body can be astonishingly loyal to these memories, holding them in muscles, nerves, and even skin as if it were protecting a sacred record. Birthmarks are among the most intriguing of these physical imprints. Across cultures, there have been accounts of individuals whose birthmarks correspond to wounds from a previous life, marks in the same location where a sword once pierced, where a bullet entered, or where a fatal injury was sustained. In some cases, these correspondences are reinforced by memories or emotions that surface unexpectedly, often triggered by something as simple as a smell, a sound, or a fleeting image. The body, it seems, is a storyteller, and sometimes it chooses to speak through scars it was born with. Mysterious aches and recurring injuries can operate in a similar way. A person might repeatedly strain the same part of their body, despite taking precautions, as if that area is more fragile than the rest. Another might feel pain or tension in a specific spot, with no clear medical explanation, the sensation flaring in moments of stress or when confronted with certain situations. These physical signals can be the residue of a past wound that never had the chance to fully heal, not just in flesh but in spirit. The soul, in its continuity, may carry that injury forward, manifesting it again as a way to invite awareness and completion. Recurring dreams often accompany these kinds of echoes. A woman plagued by sudden migraines might dream of being struck in the head during a battle centuries ago. A man with chronic chest pain might see flashes of himself falling to the ground in another era, the sound of gunfire ringing in his ears. These dreams are not always literal representations, but they can carry the emotional weight of the original trauma, allowing the dreamer to sense the connection between what they feel now and what they endured before. Unfinished wounds do not exist to punish, but to call for integration. They are the soul's way of saying, there is a part of our story we have not yet made peace with. This peace is not about erasing the memory, it is about releasing the emotional charge it still carries. When these echoes remain unresolved, they can subtly shape the way you move through life. They might influence the choices you make, the relationships you keep, or the opportunities you avoid. Without realizing it, you may be building your present reality around the edges of an old fear or pain. Some people find that when they face these wounds consciously, something extraordinary happens. The phobia begins to lessen, the pain starts to fade, the recurring injury stops repeating itself. This is not magic, but the result of finally acknowledging and addressing the root cause, even if that cause lies beyond the borders of your current memory. Hypnotherapy, meditation, energy healing, or even deep self-reflection can sometimes open a window into the original event, allowing you to see it without the veil of fear. In doing so, you begin to send the message to your body and soul that the danger has passed, that the wound no longer needs to remain open. It's worth noting that these echoes often carry lessons as well as pain. A soul that has carried the memory of a drowning may be drawn to learn about water safety in this life, perhaps even becoming a lifeguard or a rescuer. Someone who bears the mark of a blade across their skin might have a deep, innate commitment to peace and nonviolence, having learned the cost of conflict on the most personal level. In this way, the wound becomes a compass, pointing toward areas of growth or service that can transform the energy of the past into something healing for the present. There is also a gentleness required when dealing with unfinished wounds. They are not faults to be fixed, but stories to be honored. Imagine them as old travelers who have journeyed with you across lifetimes, weary but faithful, hoping to one day rest. By treating them with compassion instead of frustration, you create the space for them to finally settle. You may never know all the details of the original injury, but you can still give it closure by acknowledging its presence, thanking it for the lessons it carried, and releasing it with intention. Some wounds, of course, may never fully disappear, and that too can be part of the soul's choice. They may serve as reminders of strength, humility, or connection to a larger journey. A scar that has followed you through lifetimes may not be something to erase, but something to integrate, a reminder that you have endured and survived far more than you remember. In this sense, the wound is no longer just a mark of what was lost, but of what was gained through endurance. The next time you encounter a fear that seems too strong for its cause, or a physical pain with no clear explanation, consider that it might be more than an isolated quirk of your mind or body. It could be a thread stretching back through time, a fragment of a life whose chapter ended too abruptly. By following that thread, whether through inner work or spiritual guidance, you might not only ease the burden it carries, but also uncover a hidden piece of your own history. And in doing so, you allow the past to loosen its hold, freeing you to step more fully into the life you are living now, no longer bound by the echoes of what once was, but strengthened by the understanding of where they came from. There are times when a person encounters a language for the first time, and yet feels no barrier, no distance between their understanding and the words being spoken. A phrase heard in passing might stir a strange familiarity, or a song in an unfamiliar tongue might bring tears to the eyes without any grasp of its literal meaning. It is as if something deep within is listening, not with the mind but with the memory of the soul. For some, this recognition becomes almost unnerving. They find themselves pronouncing foreign words flawlessly, adopting the rhythm of a dialect, or intuitively understanding the tone and intention behind speech they have never studied. These moments are more than talent. They are echoes from lifetimes lived in other tongues, rising from the vault of experience that never truly closes. It doesn't stop with words. An accent can cling to the soul like the scent of a familiar place, returning at the slightest nudge. Someone born and raised in one country may slip into the inflection of another without realizing it, as though their mouth and vocal cords remember a way of speaking the current mind has never learned. They may feel most at ease hearing a certain cadence, finding its flow oddly comforting, like slipping back into a favorite chair that has long since molded to their shape. Even the way they shape vowels or pause between sentences can betray a history no birth certificate can explain. Alongside these linguistic imprints come the behaviors and gestures that feel second nature without any clear source. A person might bow slightly when greeting someone, or instinctively use hand movements common in a culture they've never visited. They might find themselves craving foods they've never tried, feeling inexplicably at home in certain architectural styles, or knowing how to navigate customs they've never been taught. These are not random quirks. They are remnants of entire ways of life once lived, now folded into the present self as subtle reminders of the paths the soul has walked. Children often display this most vividly because they are still close to the threshold between lives. A young child might mimic the mannerisms of a culture their family has no connection to, or gravitate toward books, music, and traditions from places they've never even heard of. They might hum melodies in a scale foreign to their environment, or draw symbols with surprising accuracy, unknowingly recreating art forms they once practiced centuries ago. Parents may be baffled, but the child's soul is simply reaching for something familiar, something it has known before. Sometimes the reawakening is triggered by direct exposure. A traveler might set foot in a foreign land and suddenly feel their tongue loosen, their ears tuning into patterns they shouldn't be able to catch so quickly. The first attempt at speaking the language may feel awkward, but within days they are stringing sentences together with surprising fluidity, their mouth finding shapes it has made before. In other cases, it happens without any immersion at all. A person might overhear a phrase on television and know instinctively what it means, the translation arriving without conscious thought. These moments of ease are not accidents, they are the soul retrieving stored knowledge from its deeper layers. There is a kind of longing that comes with these echoes. A person may feel pulled toward a country, a people, or a way of speaking with an intensity that cannot be rationalized. It's not curiosity in the ordinary sense, it's a magnetic pull, a sense of missing something essential. They may feel incomplete without exploring it, as though reclaiming a piece of themselves that was left behind. The first time they hear a lullaby in that language, or share a meal from that culture, something inside them exhales in relief, as if finally coming home. In rare cases, these echoes go beyond recognition and bloom into mastery almost overnight. A musician might pick up an unfamiliar instrument from another culture and play it as though guided by unseen hands, the melodies flowing through them with no conscious effort. A poet might attempt writing in a new language and find that the words arrive already in perfect form, bypassing the slow grind of study and translation. These are moments when the soul is not relearning but remembering, pulling entire skill sets from lifetimes stored beyond the reach of the conscious mind. Yet not all language echoes are gentle or pleasant. Some carry the shadow of unresolved history. A person might bristle at hearing a certain accent, feeling irrational irritation or discomfort they cannot explain. They may find certain words or phrases strike them with unease, as though linked to memories of conflict, betrayal, or loss from another life. These negative reactions are as telling as the positive ones, for they too reveal a thread between past and present, an imprint that remains long after the events themselves have passed. What is perhaps most fascinating is how these echoes can awaken in clusters within soul groups. Friends or family members might discover they share the same inexplicable connection to a culture neither has experienced in this life. They may slip into the same phrases, adopt similar habits, or feel the same pull toward a distant land. This often points to shared incarnations, where multiple souls live together in that environment, carrying its language and customs forward into their future lives. The familiarity is not only within the self, but between souls who have shared the same tongue before. Modern science often frames these abilities as coincidences, genetic predispositions, or simply the result of high adaptability. While these explanations may account for some cases, they fall short in others. Cases where fluency emerges without exposure, where accents bloom in isolation, or where behaviors align perfectly with cultures separated by centuries. For the soul, these moments are not anomalies but proof that experience is never truly lost. Every lifetime leaves behind its residue, and some of that residue hums more loudly, waiting for the right moment to be heard again. When these echoes surface, they can be embraced as gifts rather than dismissed as oddities. They are bridges between who you are now and who you have been, threads in the vast tapestry of your journey. Honoring them can mean leaning into the pull, exploring the language, the culture, the behaviors that feel like home. It can also mean noticing the discomforts, the aversions, and asking what part of your history they might be pointing toward. Whether they inspire joy or unease, these echoes are signposts, guiding you deeper into the understanding that your soul is not confined to the borders of your birth. You may never fully know the lives that gave rise to these imprints, but you can feel their truth in the way your heart responds. The familiarity of a sound, the comfort of a cadence, the way your body falls into certain patterns without thought. These are the quiet reminders that you have walked in other shoes, spoken with other tongues, and carried other names. And though this life may only hold one chapter of your story, the language echoes prove that the earlier pages are still there, written in you, waiting to be read again. There are people who wake each day with a restless hum inside them, a feeling that they are here for something specific, something that demands to be done. It is not the vague desire for success or happiness that drives most lives, but a deeper, sharper sense, as if their very existence is tethered to a task left unfinished long ago. They cannot always name it. They may not even fully understand it. Yet it moves through their choices like an unseen current, shaping the direction of their life with a force that feels almost fated. This is the sense of mission that often rises from another time. Born of events and promises made in lifetimes the conscious mind has forgotten, but the soul remembers with perfect clarity. You can see it in the way some people move through the world, as though they are always scanning for a particular opening, a moment when their role will be revealed. They may be drawn to certain causes, without knowing why, pulled toward specific people or places, with a magnetism that defies logic. Their hearts quicken when they encounter something that resonates with the echo of their purpose, even if they cannot yet explain the connection. Sometimes it comes as a sudden moment of recognition, a meeting with someone that feels like a reunion, a visit to a location that stirs emotions too deep for words. Other times it emerges slowly, like a whisper in the background of daily life, nudging them forward, urging them not to get too comfortable, reminding them that they have work to do. The urgency that comes with this sense of mission can be both a gift and a burden. On one hand, it provides direction and meaning. Even in times of confusion or hardship, there is an underlying certainty that life is not random, that they are here for a reason. This knowledge can sustain them when others might give up, pushing them to persevere through challenges because something within insists that their work is not done. On the other hand, the weight of that responsibility can be exhausting. The sense that time is running out, even without knowing the exact deadline, can create a constant pressure, a low-grade tension that never quite goes away. For some, this drive manifests as a call to heal. They might feel compelled to mend rifts in relationships, to bring peace where there is conflict, to care for those who are hurting. This could stem from a past life where they caused harm they now feel compelled to repair, or where they failed to protect someone and have carried that guilt forward. For others, the mission is about creation, bringing something into the world that was once lost or never realized. A piece of art, a new way of thinking, an invention, or even the founding of a movement might be the culmination of threads that began weaving centuries ago. There are also those whose sense of mission is tied to justice, to speaking truths that were silenced before. They may feel a visceral reaction to injustice, unable to look away when others suffer. Sometimes this passion seems disproportionate to their personal experience, but that is only because the origin lies far beyond the present life. Perhaps they once stood by in silence and regretted it for lifetimes, or perhaps they lost everything because they dared to speak. In either case, the soul returns with a fire that refuses to be ignored. The sense of mission is not always grand or world-changing in the ways we tend to imagine. It may be as simple and as profound as raising a child with love that breaks a cycle of neglect from generations before. It could be caring for a piece of land, tending it as if it were a sacred trust passed down through time. Sometimes the mission is to be a presence in one person's life at exactly the right moment, offering the words or actions that change their course entirely. The soul does not measure significance in the same way the human mind does. What matters is not scale, but completion. Yet this feeling of purpose is rarely straightforward. Many spend years trying to uncover the exact nature of their mission, feeling the pull without the clarity. This can lead to frustration, a constant search for something unnamed. And here lies one of the paradoxes of the soul's journey. Sometimes you cannot know your mission until you are already living it. The steps you take out of curiosity, compassion, or even desperation may be the very ones that place you exactly where you are meant to be, aligning you with the task you came here to fulfill. When this sense of mission is ignored, life often becomes uncomfortable. The restlessness grows stronger, opportunities for the mission's fulfillment seem to appear more insistently, and resistance can manifest as dissatisfaction, anxiety, or even illness. It is as if the soul turns up the volume, refusing to let the human self forget what it came here to do. And when the call is finally answered, even in small ways, there is often a deep, almost cellular sense of relief, a recognition that the path is once again aligned. The origins of these missions are as varied as the souls who carry them. Some arise from vows made in sacred spaces long ago, promises to complete a work or to return for another attempt. Others are born from tragedies that left something unresolved, a battle lost, a love unfulfilled, a truth unspoken. In some cases, the mission is a continuation of a journey begun with others, a shared purpose that spans multiple lifetimes, drawing the same souls together again and again until the work is finished. There is power in acknowledging this possibility, even if you do not yet know the specifics. Simply recognizing that your sense of urgency may be rooted in a larger, older story can shift the way you see your life. It can turn frustration into curiosity, fear into determination. It can remind you that your instincts, those strange pulls towards certain actions or people, might not be random impulses, but signposts placed by your own soul to guide you home to your purpose. To live with a sense of mission is to walk with one foot in this life and one foot in another. You are shaped by histories you cannot recall in detail, yet they live in your bones, in your choices, in the moments when something deep inside you says, "This matters," and when you follow that feeling, when you commit to it without needing to see the entire map, you often find that life begins to open in unexpected ways. The right people appear, the right opportunities align. And in those moments of synchronicity, you feel the unmistakable confirmation that you are exactly where you are supposed to be. In the end, the sense of mission is not just about completing an old task. It is about honoring the continuity of your own soul, recognizing that who you are now is built upon every version of yourself that came before. When you live with that awareness, you are no longer simply moving through time. You are participating in a story that began long before you were born, and will continue long after this chapter is complete. And somewhere in the quiet spaces of your being, you already know what part of that story is yours to finish. There is a kind of compassion that cannot be taught, not in the way textbooks or lectures teach. It's not about memorizing the right words to say in moments of pain, or practicing politeness in the face of suffering. It's something deeper, something that comes from having lived so many different lives, in so many different skins, that you can feel another person's experience as if it were your own. This is the compassion that is born from memory, not just of your current journey, but of countless others. It is the kind of empathy that does not pause to calculate whether someone deserves understanding or mercy, because the soul carrying it has been in every role imaginable: victim and aggressor, ruler and servant, healer and the one in desperate need of healing. When a soul has walked through many incarnations, it collects more than memories. It collects perspective. In one life, you may have known the bitter ache of hunger, your body trembling as you searched for scraps. In another, you may have been the one who feasted, while others starved, perhaps blind to the suffering around you. In yet another, you may have been the hand that fed someone, knowing it would be the difference between their life and death. Each role leaves its imprint, not as a distant story, but as an emotional truth you carry forward. So when you see someone in distress now, that recognition doesn't just happen in your mind, it happens in your heart, because somewhere in your soul, you remember what it feels like to stand where they stand. This kind of compassion is not loud or performative. It doesn't need to announce itself or demand acknowledgement. It is quiet, steady, and unwavering. You can see it in the way someone listens without interrupting, in the way they notice the small signs of hurt in another, and respond without hesitation. It's in the softness of their voice when speaking to someone in pain, and in the way they instinctively reach out to comfort, even when there is nothing tangible they can do to fix the problem. That kind of instinct doesn't develop overnight. It's the product of countless experiences where love, or the absence of it, shaped entire lifetimes. A soul that has lived many lives doesn't just understand human suffering, it understands the suffering of all beings. Having inhabited so many forms, it knows the joy of a bird taking flight, the fear of a hunted animal, the resilience of a tree weathering storms, the silent patience of the earth itself. This awareness makes cruelty unbearable to witness. To see harm done to another being feels like harm done to oneself, because in truth, the soul has been both giver and receiver of such harm, in other turns of the wheel. That is why some people seem to have a built-in reverence for life, why they can't walk past an injured creature without trying to help, why they feel grief when the forests are cut down or the oceans are poisoned. They are not simply environmentalists or animal lovers, they are old souls remembering themselves in every living thing. This depth of compassion often appears in children before the world has had time to harden them. A child who weeps inconsolably at the sight of an animal in distress, who instinctively comforts a stranger, or who seems overwhelmed by the sadness of others, may not be overly sensitive in the way people think. They may simply be carrying the unfiltered empathy of many lifetimes, a knowing that no one had to explain to them. Over time, the world might try to teach them to suppress it, to toughen up, or not take things so personally. But for a soul that has truly lived, that sensitivity is not a weakness, it is the mark of a heart that remembers. There is also a shadow side to this kind of compassion. Carrying the weight of so many perspectives can be exhausting. When you have been in every position, the one who suffered, the one who caused suffering, the one who stood by helplessly, you feel the complexity of every situation. You know there are no simple villains or perfect heroes, only souls at different points in their learning. This can make it difficult to judge harshly, but it can also make it harder to protect yourself. Those with deep compassion often take on the burdens of others, feeling a responsibility to help, even when it drains them. They may struggle to draw boundaries, because in their understanding, separation is an illusion, and to turn away from someone's pain feels like turning away from a part of themselves. Yet this same vast understanding allows them to be healers in ways they may not even realize. A single conversation with someone who carries such compassion can feel like a balm. They don't rush to offer advice or insist on solutions. Instead, they create a space where another's pain is acknowledged without judgment, where the fullness of their experience can simply exist without being dismissed or minimized. This is the kind of healing that doesn't come from fixing, but from seeing, truly seeing, another being for who they are and where they are in their journey. In relationships, this depth of compassion can be both a blessing and a challenge. On one hand, it fosters patience, forgiveness, and a willingness to work through difficulties rather than abandon them. On the other, it can lead to staying in situations longer than is healthy, out of a belief that every soul deserves understanding and another chance. The challenge for such a person is learning that compassion does not require self-sacrifice to the point of harm. Sometimes the most compassionate act is to let someone face the consequences of their actions so they can grow, a truth that many old souls have learned the hard way. This expansive empathy can also fuel a sense of purpose that goes beyond personal gain. People with this quality often feel called to serve, whether through direct acts of kindness, careers in caregiving or advocacy, or creative expressions that inspire others to connect with their own humanity. They may not always know why they feel this pull so strongly, but at its root is the memory of having been on the receiving end of someone else's kindness in another life, knowing firsthand the way a single act can change everything. That knowing becomes a quiet vow carried from one lifetime to the next, to be that presence for someone else. Perhaps the most profound aspect of this compassion is that it is not conditional. It is not reserved only for those who are easy to love or who fit neatly into one's own worldview. Having lived many lives, the soul knows it has made mistakes, stumbled, and hurt others in its own learning. That knowledge strips away the illusion of superiority, replacing it with humility. When you know that you, too, have been the person who failed, the one who lashed out, the one who didn't understand, it becomes impossible to deny that same grace to someone else. This doesn't excuse harmful actions, but it does place them within the broader context of soul growth, where every life is an opportunity to evolve. In the end, this depth of compassion is not just about kindness, it's about connection. It's the recognition that all lives are threads in the same vast tapestry, woven together in ways we may never fully understand. To harm another is to harm oneself, and to love another is to nourish the whole. A soul that has lived many lives doesn't just know this in theory, it has experienced it, over and over, until the truth of it is etched into its very being. And so it moves through the world differently, gently, thoughtfully, with eyes that see beyond the surface, and a heart that beats in rhythm with all of life. There is a strange seduction in looking backward across the long arc of your soul's journey. The idea that you have walked this earth before, that you have worn other faces, lived in other lands, loved and lost under different names, can be both comforting and intoxicating. When glimpses of those other lives come, through dreams, visions, intuitive flashes, or even detailed past life regressions, they can feel more real than the present moment. The pull toward them is magnetic, as though the threads of those identities are tugging at you, whispering that your truest self lies somewhere in the shadows of history. But while the past can offer insight, healing, and context, it can also become a trap, a gilded cage that keeps you from fully inhabiting the one life that is in front of you now. Some people find a past life story so compelling that it begins to overshadow their current existence. They start to identify more strongly with who they were than with who they are. If they once held a position of influence or respect, they may cling to that memory as a way to feel significant now. If they endured great tragedy, they may wear it like a badge of endurance, seeing themselves primarily through the lens of that old wound. The danger is subtle at first, just a fascination, a curiosity. But over time, it can grow into a kind of spiritual nostalgia, a longing to return to something that no longer exists, while the present slips by unnoticed. In some cases, the attachment comes from a sense of incompletion. If a life ended suddenly or painfully, the soul may carry an unresolved desire to finish the story. When that desire filters into the conscious mind, it can manifest as a fixation on recreating the past, whether through relationships, career paths, or even geographical locations. While this can sometimes lead to fulfilling the old lesson, it can also keep a person cycling in repetitive patterns, mistaking movement for progress. You might feel as though you're chasing something essential, only to realize years later that you've been running in circles within an echo of a life that is long gone. There is also a temptation to use past life identities as a shield from the challenges of the present. If life now feels ordinary, frustrating, or directionless, the memory of having been someone powerful or extraordinary can become a kind of escape. It allows a person to shift the focus away from the uncomfortable truth that their current path requires effort, humility, and patience. In this way, the past becomes not a source of wisdom, but a refuge from the growth that this incarnation demands. Another danger lies in adopting past life wounds so fully that they begin to define your entire sense of self. You may find yourself over-identifying with old traumas, projecting them onto current relationships or situations that have little to do with them. A distrust carried from a betrayal centuries ago may color the way you interact with people now, creating distance where there could be connection. A fear rooted in a long-ago loss may keep you from taking risks in the present, ensuring that the same pattern of avoidance repeats. When the past exerts too much influence, it's as if you're living in a house built on old foundations, unable to see that the walls no longer fit the shape of who you are meant to be today. Even the pursuit of spiritual knowledge can be distorted by this attachment. Some people become so focused on uncovering the details of their past lives that they treat them as trophies or credentials, as if the value of their soul is measured by how many times they've been someone important. This can lead to an inflated sense of self, a kind of spiritual vanity that distracts from the real work of evolving in the here and now. Others may become competitive or dismissive, using their perceived history as a way to assert superiority over others. In both cases, the focus shifts from the timeless growth of the soul to the ego's need for recognition. It is important to remember that the details of who you were are far less important than what you learned and what you are doing with those lessons now. The past was the training ground. This life is the field where that training must be applied. If you are so absorbed in the memories of what once was that you fail to engage with what is, you are essentially leaving the current chapter of your soul's story unwritten. And when this life ends, you may find that you've created yet another set of unresolved threads to carry forward. The soul's evolution is always forward-moving, even when it circles back to review or heal old patterns. Your past lives are like roots, deep and essential. But your current incarnation is the trunk and branches reaching toward the light. If you spend too much time digging through the roots, you may forget that your purpose is to grow upward. It is the balance between honoring the past and embracing the present that allows the soul to flourish. For some, the pull toward past life identities is rooted in a misunderstanding of worth. They believe that the value of their soul lies in the extraordinary moments of their history, the great loves, the acts of courage, the creative brilliance. But the truth is, the soul's worth is not earned in any single lifetime. It is inherent, constant, and independent of circumstance. Whether you were once a king or a beggar, a healer or a soldier, those roles were simply experiences through which the soul explored itself. They are costumes you have worn, meaningful, yes, but not the sum of who you are. The discipline lies in knowing when to close the door on the past and fully enter the present. This does not mean denying or forgetting what came before. It means carrying the wisdom forward without allowing the story to consume you. It means asking, how does what I remember serve me now? How can I use this knowledge to fulfill the unique lessons of this life? And it means being willing to let go of the identity attached to that memory if it no longer supports your growth. When the past overpowers the present, it can become another form of karmic entanglement, not because of what happened then, but because of how you are choosing to relate to it now. The energy you pour into clinging to those old identities could instead be invested in building something meaningful in the life you are living. And when you do that, something remarkable happens. The past begins to integrate naturally. Its power over you fades, and what remains is the essence of what was learned, distilled, and ready to serve the person you are becoming. Ultimately, the past is a library, not a home. You can visit it for guidance, for context, for inspiration, but you cannot live there without stalling your journey. The current incarnation is the only place where you can act, change, and create. It is the only place where your soul can shape the future. And the more you give yourself fully to this moment, the more the past aligns behind you, supporting your steps instead of holding you back. There comes a point when the feeling is too strong to ignore, that quiet, persistent sense that you have walked this earth before. Maybe it's a place you've never visited that feels more familiar than your own home, or a person you've just met whose eyes carry an echo you can't place. Maybe it's a dream so vivid it clings to you for days, showing you landscapes and events that feel more like memories than imagination. These moments awaken a question in the back of your mind. Have I been here before? Recognizing and confirming a reincarnated soul is both an art and a deeply personal journey, and while no single method can give absolute proof, there are pathways to clarity for those willing to explore. The first step is learning to trust your intuitive impressions. Intuition is the soul's memory surfacing through the veil of the present life. It often appears as an instant knowing, one that bypasses logical explanation. You might meet someone and feel an overwhelming wave of recognition before they've even spoken, or stand in an ancient city and feel a sudden rush of emotion, joy, sorrow, nostalgia, that makes no sense in the context of your current life. These impressions are not random, they are often the soul remembering itself. When this happens, it is worth pausing, breathing, and allowing the sensation to deepen rather than dismissing it as coincidence. The more you acknowledge these moments, the more frequent and vivid they become, as though your soul is realizing you are ready to listen. Beyond intuition, dreams are among the most revealing gateways to past life recognition. Ordinary dreams fade quickly, but past life dreams often have a weight and detail that sets them apart. You might recall clothing, dialects, or architectural styles you've never studied, yet can describe in startling accuracy. In some cases, you may see your current self within the dream, yet know without doubt that you are someone else entirely, moving through another time and place. These dreams often carry emotions that linger long after waking, as if you've briefly slipped into another chapter of your own soul's history. Keeping a dream journal beside your bed allows you to capture these fragments before the conscious mind erases them. Over time, patterns and recurring themes often emerge, pointing towards specific lifetimes or unresolved experiences seeking acknowledgement. Another method involves observing physical and behavioral traits that seem to transcend your current life experience. Certain skills and abilities often reappear as natural talents, requiring little to no training to master. A child who sits at a piano for the first time and instinctively plays complex melodies, or someone who picks up a foreign language with uncanny ease, may be drawing from knowledge earned in a past incarnation. Even distinct gestures, postures, or ways of speaking can carry over, as if the soul has imprinted them on the body once again. Paying attention to these traits in yourself and others can offer powerful clues to a deeper history. On a more deliberate level, regression techniques are one of the most widely used ways to explore past lives. Past life regression, when done by a skilled practitioner, can guide you into a relaxed, trance-like state where conscious barriers dissolve and buried memories rise to the surface. In this state, you may see images, hear voices, or even relive moments with such clarity that they feel indistinguishable from your current reality. Some recall mundane details, like the texture of a garment or the smell of a kitchen, while others experience emotionally charged events, a goodbye at a train station, a battlefield, a moment of profound love or loss. Whether symbolic or literal, these images often align with other intuitive impressions or dreams you've already had, providing a sense of continuity that reinforces their validity. However, regression is not the only path. Meditation, when approached with the intention of uncovering past life memories, can open similar doors. By entering a deep, meditative state and focusing on a specific question, such as, "Show me the origin of this connection," or "Reveal the lifetime that explains this fear," the mind becomes receptive to impressions from beyond this lifetime. Sometimes the information comes as visual imagery, other times it arrives as sudden insights or emotions, without a clear scene attached. The key is to remain open and non-judgmental, allowing the experience to unfold without forcing it. Validation can also come from unexpected sources. Historical research, for instance, has confirmed details recalled during regressions or dreams that the individual could not have known otherwise. Someone may describe the layout of a village, the insignia on a soldier's uniform, or the location of a long-forgotten landmark, only to later discover those details match historical records. These moments can be startling, as they bridge the gap between personal experience and verifiable fact. They are rare, but when they occur, they offer compelling evidence that what is being remembered is not purely imagination. Sometimes, recognition comes not through personal exploration, but through the eyes of another. A stranger might tell you that you remind them exactly of someone they knew long ago, describing not just your appearance but mannerisms and ways of speaking. In rare cases, people, especially young children, may directly tell you they knew you in another time, offering specific details that make you pause. These encounters can be disarming, yet they often serve as external confirmation of something your soul already sensed. Physical reactions can also be telling. You might feel an unexplainable pull toward certain cultures, eras, or geographic locations, as if something inside you comes alive when exposed to them. Conversely, you might experience aversion or discomfort in places or situations without any logical cause. These emotional responses can be traced to past life experiences, where joy or trauma left an imprint that continues to influence you now. Recognizing these reactions and tracing their possible origins can bring insight and healing. Recognizing a reincarnated soul in others often follows the same process as recognizing it in yourself. The connection might spark instantly, but confirmation tends to come gradually, as shared memories, parallel dreams, or mutual intuitive impressions arise. In some cases, you may both feel an unshakable sense of purpose in each other's presence, as if you are picking up a mission you left unfinished in another lifetime. There may be challenges too, as karmic debts or unresolved tensions resurface. Part of confirming such a connection lies in the way it changes you, whether it calls forth your higher self, tests your patience, or forces you to face parts of yourself you'd rather avoid. Ultimately, the most important form of confirmation comes from within. External validation can be satisfying, but the deepest knowing comes from the soul's quiet certainty. There's a point at which the question of whether a memory or connection is real becomes less important than the transformation it brings. If a dream, a vision, or a meeting changes the way you see yourself, others, or the world, then it has already served its purpose, whether it can be proven or not. Recognizing and confirming a reincarnated soul is not about satisfying curiosity alone, it is about understanding the threads that weave through your existence, influencing who you are and why you are here. It's about approaching life with the awareness that every meeting, every skill, every instinct might be the echo of another time. And it's about using that awareness not as a way to escape the present, but as a way to live it more fully, knowing you are part of a story far greater than this single chapter. There comes a point, after all the searching, the glimpses, and the revelations, when the awareness of reincarnation stops being a novelty and becomes a quiet truth you carry in your bones. It no longer feels like a shocking discovery, but like remembering something you have always known. You begin to walk through life with the steady realization that the path under your feet stretches far behind you and far ahead, that each step is part of a vast journey you are both living and remembering. This awareness changes the way you see everything, not in a way that pulls you away from the present, but in a way that deepens it. You understand that every choice, every interaction, every thought is part of a much larger tapestry, and that the way you live today shapes not only the rest of this life, but the ones yet to come. Living with this knowing means you hold a double vision. On one level, you see the ordinary details of daily life, the work, the conversations, the struggles, the routines. On another level, you see the threads connecting this moment to moments centuries past. You recognize patterns repeating, lessons resurfacing, people returning in new forms to continue a story you began together long ago. You may find yourself meeting someone and feeling that they have walked beside you before, perhaps as a friend, perhaps as a foe, perhaps as something far more complex. This awareness doesn't demand that you figure it all out. It asks only that you stay open, that you honor the possibility that life is far more interconnected than it appears. The beauty of living with the knowing is that it shifts the way you respond to challenges. Instead of seeing obstacles as random misfortunes, you begin to view them as intentional opportunities for growth, not just for your current self, but for the soul that has traveled so far to be here. A conflict with a coworker might not just be about this job, but about learning how to communicate without the old defensiveness that plagued you in another time. A heartbreak might not just be the end of a romance, but the closing of a karmic loop that has been spinning for lifetimes. With this perspective, even the most difficult experiences take on a sense of purpose, and that purpose can give you the strength to endure and transform them. At the same time, this awareness brings a gentler compassion into your life. You begin to understand that others are also on long journeys, carrying their own invisible histories, wrestling with lessons they may not yet be able to name. You might find yourself more patient with those who hurt you, not in a way that excuses harm, but in a way that recognizes the shared struggle to evolve. You start to see that each person is playing a role in the growth of others, sometimes as a helper, sometimes as a challenger, sometimes as both. And in that recognition, you soften. You no longer feel the same urgency to judge, because you see that every soul is exactly where it needs to be for the moment, even if the moment is messy. But living with the knowing also means you carry a responsibility. Once you understand that your actions ripple through time, you cannot pretend that they don't matter. You become more deliberate with your choices, aware that each one is either adding weight to your karmic load or lightening it. This doesn't mean living in fear of making a mistake. Mistakes are inevitable and often essential, but it does mean living with intention. You begin to ask yourself, will this action bring me closer to who I am meant to become? Will it heal something old, or will it create something new that I will later need to heal? This kind of self-questioning doesn't slow you down. It makes you more precise, more conscious, more aligned. Integrating this awareness into daily life also requires balance. It is easy, when faced with the vastness of your soul's history, to lose yourself in the cosmic scale of it all. But the truth is, you are not meant to live only in the infinite. You are meant to be here, now, in the physical body, with its needs, its senses, and its limitations. Honoring the soul's history does not mean escaping the present moment. It means bringing that history into the present as a source of wisdom and perspective. You eat the meal before you, not while wishing for the feasts of another century, but with gratitude for all the lifetimes that led you to this table. Sometimes, living with the knowing feels like holding a map where most of the routes are invisible, and yet you trust the terrain beneath your feet. You learn to listen to the subtle signals that tell you when you are on the right path, the ease in your chest, the synchronicities that arrive like secret confirmations, the way certain opportunities feel like the next step you were meant to take. You also learn to recognize when you've strayed, the heaviness, the resistance, the sense of walking against the current. And because you understand that nothing is wasted, you meet even your detours with curiosity. Perhaps they are not detours at all, but necessary side paths to gather something you'll need later. The knowing also brings an intimacy with the cycles of life. You see that birth and death are simply thresholds, doorways between chapters, not beginnings or endings in the absolute sense. You may still grieve deeply when someone leaves this world, But somewhere inside you, there is a quiet certainty that your connection with them is not over. You may celebrate the arrival of a new child with a recognition that you are greeting someone you already know. Life becomes less about clinging and more about flowing, less about fear of loss, and more about trust in reunion. There is a quiet joy in this way of living. Even when things are hard, you can step back and see the beauty of the whole design, the way the soul gathers experiences like a master artist gathering colors. Each lifetime adds a new shade, a new texture, a new depth to the work. And when you look at it that way, you realize that the masterpiece is not something waiting at the end of the journey. The masterpiece is the journey itself. Ultimately, living with the knowing is about integration. It's about holding the truth of your vast history without letting it pull you out of the life you are living now. It's about honoring the lessons of the past while fully committing to the work of the present. It's about remembering that while you have been many things in many times, this version of you, this unique combination of experiences, challenges, and gifts, has never existed before and will never exist again. That makes this life as sacred and irreplaceable as any other you've lived. When you can hold that truth in your heart, something profound happens. You stop searching for meaning as if it was somewhere outside you, waiting to be found. You start living the meaning, moment by moment, in the way you speak, the way you love, the way you choose. And in that way, you are not just honoring your soul's past, you are shaping its future, one conscious breath at a time.